What would you do if you came face to face with a killer like the Zodiac? In the late 1970s, San Francisco was shaken again as blood-red notes began to appear on city walls, each one found near a fresh murder. Were they warnings, confessions, or the mark of a new serial killer who was never caught? Subscribe for more unsolved stories and press the bell icon so you never miss the mysteries that still haunt our streets. San Francisco in the late 1970s was a city on edge. The scars of the Zodiac killings still lingered in people's minds. The shadow of that mysterious figure who had once taunted police and newspapers with cryptic letters hadn't disappeared. If anything, it left the city in a permanent state of unease. People feared the Zodiac might return at any moment. But no one expected a different kind of terror to arrive. This time, the warning didn't come in a newspaper letter. It came written on the very walls of the city itself. It started one cold December night in 1976. A street cleaner named Raymond Ortiz was making his usual rounds near the Mission District. Not far from 24th Street, he noticed something strange on the side of an abandoned grocery store. The paint was fresh, still dripping in the cold air. In dark blood-red letters, the wall read, "I see you." At first, Ortiz thought it was just graffiti. After all, San Francisco's walls were full of tags, gang markings, and political slogans. But something about these words made him pause. The size of the letters, the way they seemed rushed, yet deliberate, gave him chills. He reported it to his supervisor, but got only a shrug in response. Just another night in the city, hours later, just 2 blocks away, a young man named David Morales was found dead in an alley. He had been stabbed multiple times. No witnesses, no clear motive. The only strange thing? His body lay in direct line of sight from that wall. When police arrived, they couldn't ignore the chilling coincidence. A message painted in red and a body lying within its shadow. Detective Harold Collins, a seasoned officer who had worked through the Zodiac investigation, was among the first on the scene. He bent down to look at the wall, running his flashlight over the dripping paint. "It looks like blood," one rookie whispered, but lab tests later confirmed it wasn't blood, just red paint. Still, the symbolism was impossible to ignore. Collins muttered something that stuck with his partner for years.
"Oh, we've seen this before."
Someone trying to write their fear into the city. The murder of David Morales was tragic. But at the time, it didn't gain much press attention. Crime in the Mission District wasn't unusual. But when the second note appeared just weeks later, San Francisco began to take notice. On January 14, 1977, another message appeared. This time in Chinatown, on the brick wall of a laundromat, the words were larger, angrier, and even more direct. "Next is you." That same night, not far from the laundromat, a 26-year-old woman named Emily Chang was found strangled in the stairwell of her apartment. Now, police had a pattern. A threatening message, a murder nearby. The words seemed almost like announcements. Eerie headlines scrawled in red before the crimes were discovered. The city press quickly seized on the story. Headlines screamed San Francisco's new Zodiac, and the wall rider strikes. Fear spread through neighborhoods, especially because the killer didn't seem to target one type of victim. A young Latino man, then an Asian woman, random, unconnected, yet marked by the same chilling calling card. What truly terrified residents was the public nature of the messages. The Zodiac's letters were mailed in secret, but this new killer wrote in places everyone could see. Sidewalks, walls, alleys, the very skin of the city. It felt like San Francisco itself was bleeding with words. Detective Collins became obsessed. He began walking the streets at night, looking for fresh paint, for any sign of a new message. He interviewed graffiti crews, gang members, even artists, trying to figure out if someone was mimicking the Zodiac for attention. But the handwriting, the brushstrokes, the placement, everything felt too intentional. Too connected to the murders, police brought in handwriting experts. But unlike the Zodiac's cryptic letters, these notes were short, almost primitive. A child could have written them, which made them harder to trace. Some officers began to joke that maybe the killer wanted them to think it was a child. Others thought it was a gang tactic, a way to mark territory with blood. But Collins dismissed that theory. "This isn't about territory," he told the press at one point. "This is about theater. Someone is putting on a show, and the whole city is the audience." By the time February rolled around, San Francisco was in a state of paranoia. Newspapers reported sightings of red writing all over town. Some turned out to be hoaxes, copycats, scribbling red paint just to cause panic. But then came the third message, the one that changed everything. On February 22, 1977, tourists walking near Fisherman's Wharf stumbled upon a message painted across a pier wall in jagged, dripping letters, TICK, TOCK. That night, a dock worker named Henry Wallace was found bludgeoned to death not far from the pier. The press had a field day. The wall-writing killer, as they now called him, seemed to be everywhere. The city's mayor, George Moscone, held a press conference promising swift action. "We will not allow fear to control this city," he said. But the truth was, fear already had. For ordinary people, the terror was personal. Parents warned their children not to walk near alleys or abandoned buildings. Couples avoided late-night strolls. Every splash of red paint on a wall sent shivers through neighborhoods. Rumors spread quickly. Some claimed the killer dipped his brush in the blood of his victims. Others whispered that he was a disgruntled painter who lost his job and wanted revenge on the city. A few even believed it was the Zodiac himself, returned under a new mask. But deep down, everyone knew one thing. Whoever was behind the words was watching them, writing their fears into the very streets they walked. Detective Collins worked late nights, piecing together maps of where each message had appeared. Mission District, Chinatown, Fisherman's Wharf. He drew lines between them, trying to see a pattern. Was the killer following a path? Or was he taunting them by striking in different neighborhoods, keeping the city guessing? The deeper Collins dug, the stranger things became. Witnesses near the scenes reported seeing a man in a dark coat, sometimes carrying what looked like a painter's brush or a bucket. But no one ever got a clear look. Some descriptions painted him as tall, others as short. Sometimes he was middle-aged, sometimes younger. It was as if he was a ghost, leaving only his words behind. By the spring of 1977, 3 murders and 3 notes had rocked San Francisco. The wall-writing killer, as the city now knew him, was only beginning his campaign of fear. And though detectives chased every lead, killer always seemed one step ahead. But no one was prepared for the 4th message and the revelation it carried. By the time spring of 1977 rolled around, San Francisco was living in quiet terror. 3 notes, 3 murders. The wall-writing killer, as newspapers had named him, was no longer just a whispered rumor. He was a fact, a presence carved into brick and blood. But what the city didn't know was that the killer was preparing to escalate. His words were about to become more than just warnings. They would become messages. The 4th note appeared on March 19, 1977, a rainy Sunday morning. Residents of North Beach, the city's Italian neighborhood, awoke to find a chilling message sprawled across the wall of a bakery. "You can't stop me." The letters stretched across the entire storefront, uneven and dripping from the rain. Some thought it was a prank, until word spread that a man named Antonio Russo, the bakery's owner, had been found murdered in his apartment above the shop. He had been stabbed repeatedly, the brutality far worse than the previous killings. This time, connection between the note and the victim wasn't just geographical. It was personal. The killer seemed to know where his victim lived and chose his wall deliberately. For police, the case had turned from haunting coincidence into something undeniable. A serial killer was using the city itself as his canvas. Detective Harold Collins stood outside the bakery that morning, rain soaking through his coat. He studied the dripping letters. "You can't stop me." The words felt like a slap to the face, not just to the public, but to the police themselves. It was taunting, a direct challenge. Reporters swarmed the scene, hungry for answers. Was this the new Zodiac? Was San Francisco cursed to relive the nightmare of the late 60s and early 70s? Collins gave the press the same line he had rehearsed. "We are pursuing all leads. We believe this is the work of one individual, and we will stop him." But privately, Collins knew the killer had just declared war on the city. In the weeks that followed, police flooded the streets. Patrols increased in neighborhoods where notes had appeared. Officers carried sketches of a tall, shadowy figure seen near Fisherman's Wharf and North Beach, but the descriptions varied too wildly to be useful. Some swore the man limped. Others claimed he had a strange laugh. No one could agree on what he really looked like. The killer, meanwhile, seemed to enjoy the game. On April 3rd, another note appeared, this time near Golden Gate Park, painted across the side of a bus stop in long, messy strokes. The message read, "I'm still here," hours later. Joggers found the body of a woman in her 30s lying beneath a tree nearby. She was later identified as Susan Turner, a local schoolteacher. Unlike the previous victims, Susan's murder had no clear motive. She wasn't involved in gangs, didn't owe money, and had no enemies. She was, as Detective Collins later put it, just an ordinary person who crossed paths with a nightmare. This was the turning point. The killer wasn't targeting specific groups. He wasn't motivated by robbery or revenge. He was random, unpredictable, and his only constant was the words he left behind. The media frenzy exploded. San Francisco's wall writer dominated headlines. National outlets picked up the story. Reporters compared the case to Jack the Ripper, the Zodiac, and even the Son of Sam in New York. The killer's notes weren't just graffiti anymore. They were front-page news, and the killer seemed to know it. On April 20th, 1977, the most disturbing note yet appeared. This time, the killer didn't just write on a random wall. He chose the side of a police precinct building in the Tenderloin district. Painted in thick, red letters, the message read, "Catch me before I kill again." The entire city erupted in panic. For the first time, the killer had addressed the police directly. It was a direct echo of the Zodiac's taunting letters years before. But unlike the Zodiac, this message wasn't hidden in code or delivered by mail. It was on the city's walls for every passerby to see. Collins was furious. "He's laughing at us," he said to his team. "He wants us to feel powerless. And right now, he's winning." That same week, another murder occurred. A 19-year-old college student named Michael Adams was found stabbed in an alley near Market Street. The words "Catch me" were scrawled on the ground near his body in chalk. It wasn't paint this time, but the handwriting matched. It was becoming clear the killer wasn't just writing notes near murders. The notes were now part of the crime scenes themselves. Citizens demanded answers. Town hall meetings were filled with angry residents demanding curfews, tougher policing, even vigilante patrols. Parents walked their children to school. Couples avoided nighttime strolls. Every splash of red paint was reported to police, overwhelming the department with false alarms. Yet the killer continued to evade capture. Detective Collins tried everything: surveillance, undercover officers, even setting up decoys with buckets of red paint left around neighborhoods to see if the killer would strike. But nothing worked. It was as if the wall-writing killer could vanish into the very streets he haunted. By May 1977, the killer had claimed at least 6 lives and left behind half a dozen notes. And then, he took the game one step further. On May 29th, a massive crowd gathered for the annual Carnival Parade in the Mission District. Bright costumes, drums, and music filled the streets. People laughed and danced, desperate to forget the fear that gripped the city. But when the parade ended and the cleanup began, workers discovered a new note scrawled across a building along the parade route. The letters were jagged, uneven, written in haste. "All of you." The words sent chills through the city. This wasn't aimed at one victim. This was aimed at everyone. That night, no body was found. No murder followed. But some believed the note itself was the murder, a killing of safety, of normalcy. The killer had managed to terrorize the entire city with just 3 words. Detective Collins stayed up late that night in his office, staring at the map of the city pinned to his wall. Red strings connected the locations of each note, each body, but the pattern still made no sense. "What's the message?" he whispered to himself. The killer wasn't just writing on walls. He was writing on the psyche of San Francisco, carving fear into every street corner. And with each note, it became clearer. He wasn't going to stop. The city braced itself. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the wall-writing killer struck again, and the next. Note would prove to be the most terrifying yet. By the summer of 1977, San Francisco was no longer just living in fear, it was suffocating in it. The wall-writing killer had evolved from an eerie graffiti artist into a full-blown urban legend. Whispers in bars, conversations on buses, and late-night radio shows all circled around the same questions. Who was he? What did he want? And most terrifying of all, who would be next? Detective Harold Collins had spent months chasing shadows, but he knew something had shifted. The killer was no longer satisfied with vague warnings like "I see you" or "Catch me." His messages were beginning to feel sharper, more personal, as if he was no longer speaking to the city as a whole, but directly to individuals. And on June 17th, that suspicion became horrifyingly real. That morning, a businessman named Robert Hale left his apartment near Nob Hill. He was a respected banker, well known in his community. As he walked toward his car, he froze. Painted across the garage door of his building in dark, dripping red were the words, "Hale dies." Neighbors gathered, shocked, whispering. Some thought it was a cruel prank, maybe related to his work. But only hours later, Robert Hale was found dead in the parking garage of his office. He had been shot twice in the chest. For the first time, the killer had named his victim before the murder. The city exploded with panic. If the wall-writing killer could call out names, then anyone could be next. Reporters filled the airwaves with speculation. How did the killer know his victims? Was he stalking them in advance? Did he choose them randomly, or was there some hidden logic? Collins felt the weight of the city on his shoulders. He knew this case had just reached an entirely new level. The killer wasn't just writing to scare anymore. He was writing to prove he had control. A week later, another message appeared. This time on a chain-link fence near the Haight-Ashbury district. It read, "Linda, run." The name sent police scrambling. Detectives canvassed the area, searching for women named Linda. They knocked on doors. Warned residents, begged anyone with that name to take precautions. For 2 tense days, nothing happened. Then, on June 24th, a young woman named Linda Parker, a college student, was found strangled in her dormitory. On the wall above her bed, written in lipstick, were the same 2 words: "Linda, run." The killer had anticipated the police. He knew they would scramble to protect potential victims. And yet, he had already planned his move. For Collins, it was like chasing a phantom that enjoyed playing games. The wall-writing killer was always one step ahead, mocking their efforts, twisting their fear. By July, the killer had claimed at least 8 lives, and the city was in a frenzy. Talk radio buzzed with theories. Some believed he was a painter with knowledge of the city's architecture. Others claimed he was a police officer himself, using insider knowledge to taunt his colleagues. The scariest rumor of all? That the Zodiac had returned under a new identity, evolving his methods to adapt to a new decade. Collins hated the Zodiac comparisons, but he couldn't deny the similarities. The taunts, the randomness, the theater of it all. And then came the note that nearly broke him. On July 9th, 1977, a message appeared not on a random wall, but on the side of Detective Collins' own home. "Collins, you're next." His wife screamed when she saw it. Neighbors gathered in shock. Reporters rushed to the scene, snapping photographs before police could scrub the paint away. Collins felt a chill he had never known before. It was no longer just about the city. The killer had crossed the line into his personal life. His wife and children were terrified. He arranged for them to stay with relatives outside the city. But the damage was done. "This son of a bitch knows where I live," Collins told his captain. "That means he's watching me. Maybe he's been watching all of us." The department doubled security around officers' homes. But Collins couldn't shake the paranoia. Every shadow, every sound at night, felt like the killer lurking outside. He had spent years hunting criminals. Now he felt like the prey. On July 15th, Another note appeared, this time outside a downtown movie theater. In massive, jagged letters, it read, "The end is near." Panic swept through the theater. People screamed, running from the building, convinced a massacre was about to happen. Police evacuated the block, combing through every alley and rooftop, but no attack came. No body was found. Instead, the killer seemed to be feeding on the fear itself. By writing those 4 words, he had managed to terrorize hundreds of people without even lifting a weapon. Collins realized the horrifying truth. The murders were only part of the performance. The real weapon was fear. The city itself was the canvas and its people, its unwilling actors in the killer's theater. As July turned into August, the killer struck again. A taxi driver named Jorge Martinez was found stabbed in his cab near Union Square. On the passenger side window, smeared in blood, were the words, "Fare paid." The gruesome message sent shivers through the city's cab community. Many drivers refused to work nights, fearing they could be next. Passengers were stranded, nightlife dwindled, and the city's economy took a hit. The killer wasn't just targeting individuals anymore. He was crippling the city itself. Collins and his team worked around the clock. They set up stakeouts, followed tips, interviewed anyone who had seen suspicious figures near the walls before the notes appeared. But the killer remained untouchable. Psychologists brought in by the police offered chilling insights. "He craves recognition," one said. "He wants to be remembered, like Zodiac, like Son of Sam. The walls are his newspaper, and we are all his readers." Another expert suggested something darker. The names he chooses may not be random. He might know them personally. He could be someone blending into daily life, a teacher, a worker, a neighbor. That's why he's so hard to catch. He looks ordinary until he picks up the brush. By late August, the city was paralyzed. Police patrols doubled, neighborhood watch groups sprang up, and red paint sales were monitored at hardware stores. Still, the messages appeared, and then, on August 29th, the killer left his most shocking note yet. On the side of City Hall, in towering letters that stretched across the stone facade, the killer wrote, "Hello, San Francisco." It was broad daylight. Thousands of people passed the building every day. How had no one seen him paint it? How had he managed to mark the very heart of the city without being caught? For Collins, this was the breaking point. The killer was no longer hiding in alleys or backstreets. He was standing in the open, mocking the entire city, daring them to stop him. And as the summer of fear turned into fall, one thing became clear. The wall-riding killer was just getting started. By the fall of 1977, San Francisco felt less like a city and more like a hunted village. The wall-riding killer wasn't just a criminal anymore. He was a phantom, a figure woven into the very streets. Every brick wall became suspicious. Every splash of red paint sent people running. Every whispered rumor felt like a prophecy. And then, in September, the killings escalated to a level no one had dared imagine. The first strike came on September 10th, a crowded Saturday night in the Tenderloin district, where neon signs lit up the streets and music poured out of bars. Amid the noise and bustle, someone noticed a fresh message painted across the side of a liquor store tonight. At first, people thought it was meaningless, just another warning. But at midnight, chaos erupted. Gunshots rang out in a nearby alley, and when police arrived, they found 3 bodies. All men, all shot at close range. This was the killer's boldest move yet. Multiple victims. A massacre. And the single word "tonight" had foretold it all. The city erupted in panic. Crowds shouted at police for failing to protect them. Newspapers ran terrifying headlines. Wall-riding killer strikes and Tenderloin massacre. Radio hosts called it the bloodiest night since the Zodiac years. Detective Harold Collins stood over the crime scene. Staring at the word "tonight," he felt hollow. The killer wasn't just taunting anymore. He was commanding, and the city was obeying. 2 weeks later, another note appeared, this time in broad daylight. On September 23rd, workers at a downtown construction site found a message scrawled across a half-built wall. "No, safe place. That evening, a homeless man was discovered, beaten to death nearby. But what horrified police wasn't just the murder. It was the fact that hundreds of people had passed by the message during the day. The killer was no longer hiding under the cover of night. He was bold enough to strike in daylight, certain no one would catch him. The sense of dread deepened. People stopped going out at night altogether. Restaurants closed early, theaters were half empty, and even the famous nightlife of North Beach dimmed. The wall-riding killer hadn't just claimed lives, he had stolen the soul of the city. Detective Collins grew restless. He was haunted by the note the killer had left on his house months earlier. Collins, no next. Every morning, he checked his walls, half expecting to see fresh paint. Every night, he walked his block, hand on his revolver. His obsession with the case was eating him alive. One evening, he sat in his office, surrounded by maps, photos, and transcripts. He noticed something he hadn't before. The order of the murders seemed random, but the placement of the notes formed a loose circle around the city. "It's like he's closing in," Collins whispered. The thought chilled him. Was the killer drawing the city into his trap? October arrived, and with it, the most brazen message yet. On October 12th, painted across a wall near City Hall, were the words, "Hello again." The phrase made headlines instantly. Was it a reference to the earlier Hello, San Francisco note? Was the killer reminding the city he was still in control? Hours later, the body of a young reporter named Karen Miller was found in an alley nearby. She had been investigating the wall-riding killer for weeks, writing articles that questioned whether he was as powerful as people thought. Now, her death felt like an answer. The killer had silenced a voice of doubt. Collins was devastated. He had met Karen several times, admired her courage, and now she was gone, her life taken as part of the killer's ongoing performance. That same week, the killer escalated again. On October 18th, a message appeared outside a busy BART station. "Look up." Commuters were confused. Some stared at the rooftops nervously. Police rushed to the scene, unsure what the killer meant. Then, hours later, a man was found pushed off a nearby rooftop to his death. The city had reached a breaking point. People began demanding curfews, military intervention, anything to end the nightmare. Parents refused to let children walk alone. Businesses saw profits collapse. San Francisco, once a city of culture and nightlife, had become a city of silence. Detective Collins felt himself unraveling. He had spent months chasing the killer, but the notes only grew bolder. Every time he thought they might catch him, phantoms slipped through their fingers at night. Collins dreamed of walls covered in red writing. Endless corridors of messages leading nowhere. He woke in cold sweats, his wife begging him to let someone else take the case. But he refused. He couldn't let go. "This isn't just a killer," he told his captain. "This is a war for the soul of San Francisco." Then came November, the month that nearly broke the city. On November 2nd, the killer struck during a parade in Union Square. Thousands gathered to celebrate a civic event, banners waving, children laughing. But when the parade ended, police discovered a massive message painted across the side of a nearby building. "All watch." Within hours, a bomb threat was called into the police department. Chaos erupted as crowds scattered, fearing an explosion. No bomb was ever found, but in the panic, a woman was trampled to death. The killer hadn't even needed to kill directly. He had used fear itself as the weapon. For Collins, this was the lowest point. He sat in his office late that night, staring at the city map. His eyes burned. His heart ached. He had lost count of the bodies, the notes, the chaos, and yet he knew the killer wasn't finished. Then, on November 22nd, just days before Thanksgiving, came the note that shook the city to its core, painted across the Golden Gate Bridge. In letters so large, they stretched across an entire support beam, were the words, "The Feast." Tourists screamed. Police swarmed the bridge, shutting it down. The killer had just written on the city's most iconic landmark. That night, 2 bodies were found beneath the bridge, a young couple who had been reported missing days earlier. Their throats had been slit. The wall-riding killer had struck his most symbolic blow yet. By December, San Francisco was a city living in pure dread. No one felt safe. Every wall was a warning, every note a prophecy. The killer had become bigger than life, bigger than death. Detective Collins knew the case was spiraling out of control. But deep inside, he also felt something else. The killer was building to an ending. The performance couldn't go on forever. The only question was, would the curtain fall with the killer unmasked, or would the city be left with nothing but red words on empty walls? The morning fog rolled over San Francisco Bay, swallowing the Golden Gate Bridge in a blanket of gray. By the late 1970s, the city had lived through nearly a decade of whispered terrors. The Zodiac, zebra murders, and now the chilling wall notes that appeared beside bloodied bodies. People still whispered about them in late-night diners, in barbershops, even in schoolyards. Parents warned their kids not to walk home alone. Cab drivers locked their doors after dark. The walls of the city, once covered in psychedelic art and political slogans, now felt cursed. But just as quickly as the nightmare had begun, it seemed to stop. The killings that matched the wall writing ceased after 1979. The city began to exhale, though uneasily. Everyone wanted to believe the nightmare was over, but deep down, many feared the silence was just another kind of message. The last note, the final note, appeared on the crumbling brick of a warehouse near the Embarcadero. Written in the same smeared red, it read, "The city sleeps, but I do not. You'll never find me." Police treated it with urgency, but unlike before, there was no body nearby. No stabbing in the shadows, no alley drenched in blood, just words on a wall. Some officers argued it was the killer's farewell. Others insisted it was a fake, a copycat feeding the legend. But even the skeptics admitted the handwriting matched. If it truly was the killer's last word, then he vanished into the city like a ghost, carrying with him the secrets of every victim, the suspects that got away over the years, names piled up. A drifter who disappeared after being questioned in '77, a former dock worker with a violent past, a troubled Vietnam vet who wrote unsettling poetry about blood and shadows. Each seemed promising, but none stuck. The case files, once thick with leads, slowly thinned out. Detectives retired. Witnesses moved or died. Evidence boxes gathered dust in police basements. By the late 1980s, the wall notes had become a story old-timers told rookies. San Francisco once had another Zodiac, and we never caught him. But every few years, something strange would happen. A cold case investigator would revisit the handwriting samples. An amateur sleuth would find a strange letter online. A rumor would spread of another note found in Oakland or Daly City. Nothing was ever confirmed. The whispers never died. The shadow of the Zodiac. The hardest part for investigators and for the public was separating this case from the legend of the Zodiac. Some people refused to believe they were different killers at all. The Zodiac was never caught, after all. Could these notes have been his second act? But handwriting experts said otherwise. The style was different, messier, more emotional, less taunting. The Zodiac wanted fame. The wall writer seemed to want release. Almost as if the killings weren't about outsmarting the police, but about expressing something dark and broken inside. And yet, the similarities haunted everyone. Cryptic writings, unsolved murders, a city that never truly healed. San Francisco became a place where killers could vanish into fog, leaving nothing behind but words. The forgotten victims, what gets lost in the mystery, and what true crime obsessives sometimes forget are the people at the center of it. There was Daniel Reed, the young artist who dreamed of painting murals but instead became part of one. His girlfriend, decades later, still leaves flowers on the Mission District wall where the note about Red Rivers was found. There was Rosa Delgado, the waitress from Oakland who vanished after her shift, only for her body to be found in Golden Gate Park. Her mother refused to move from the neighborhood, saying if I leave, she'll be forgotten. There was John Mercer, the dock worker stabbed near Pier 39. He was the one whose murder note mentioned the blood of the sea, his brother still. believes the killer must have been someone who worked the docks, someone who knew their world too well. These names, and many others, never got the justice they deserved. Their families never saw handcuffs slapped on the wrists of the monster who wrote those notes. They never heard a confession. For them, the case isn't just a mystery, it's a wound that never healed. The legacy of fear today. If you walk down certain streets in San Francisco, you'll still see graffiti, political slogans, artistic murals, random scrawls of love and anger. But for those who know the history, there's always a chill when they see red paint on brick walls. Because the killer's legacy isn't just the lives he took, it's the paranoia he left behind. The knowledge that someone could commit such brutal crimes, mock the police with messages in plain sight, and then disappear into the fog forever. San Francisco became a city of mysteries, and this case is one of the darkest threads in its tapestry. It's a reminder that some killers are never caught, some questions never answered, and some stories never end. What really happened? Was the killer a copycat who fed on the Zodiac's shadow? Was he a lone drifter who died without anyone knowing? Was he arrested for another crime under a different name? Or is he still alive somewhere, old and unrecognizable, smiling every time he reads that his crimes remain unsolved? The truth is buried in the walls of San Francisco. Somewhere hidden in forgotten case files or untested evidence may lie the key to unmasking him. But until then, the city will keep its secret. Closing reflection, every city has its myths. Some are born of folklore, others of fact, but the most terrifying ones are those that blur the line between the two. The wall-writing killer is one of those. Real murders, real notes, but no face, no ending, no closure, and maybe that's the cruelest part. Not knowing who walked those streets, brush or marker in hand, leaving behind words soaked in blood. Not knowing if justice will ever come. The walls of San Francisco once spoke, and what they said still haunts the city today.